Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome again to the Manatee Chamber of Commerce's Politics and Pints annual legislative wrap-up. And we're glad to have you here. Before we get started, I want to remind everyone to please silence your cell phones. And now I'd like everyone to please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance Thank you. If you'll bear with me, I want to introduce some of our elected officials that made it in, and I apologize if I miss any of you. It's a little hard to see with the lights up here. I want to introduce from Manatee County Government, Chairman Kevin Van Osterbridge. I know I saw him earlier. Commissioner Amanda Ballard, I know I talked to her. Commissioner George Cruz, I know I saw him. And Commissioner Mike Ron, I know I saw Mike, thank you. From the city of Bradenton and also members of the legislative committee, Mayor Jean Brown, Vice Mayor Jane Coker, Councilwoman Pam Coachman, Councilwoman Lisa Gonzalez Moore, and Councilman Josh Kramer. Thank you for joining us, City of Bradenton. Also, I saw the Clerk of the Court and Comptroller of the County, Angel Conveso. I did not see Supervisor Senator Bennett, but I did see from Congressman Buchanan's office, Sally Shealy. Thank you all for your continued public service and your commitment to our community. I also want to recognize our presenting sponsor for today's event, and that's Spectrum by Charter Communications. We appreciate their ongoing support, and they've been great partners with this event for several years. So I want to introduce Albie Kamansky.
I don't know. Thank you, Chairman. All right. Good afternoon, Manatee County. As Casey said, my name's Albie Kaminsky, and I'm here to either one, start singing karaoke, or two, start my stand-up routine. So which one do you guys want to hear? Okay, you're not getting either. I'm just kidding. You're not getting either. So again, Albie Kaminsky with Spectrum. I'm a proud employee of Spectrum. I also sit on Casey's legislative committee. So thank you. And again, thank you to Jackie for putting on the whole Manatee County Chamber of Commerce for putting on such a great event year after year. Again, a great feel. We start off the year with pancakes and politics, and then we wrap up the year when we all need a beer with pints and politics. So thank you guys again for putting on together such a great event. Again, I work for Spectrum. A lot of you hear us as Charter Communications. Charter Communications, Spectrum, however you guys want to describe it. Most of you would know us in the community as a cable company, but if you ask our CEO up in Stamford, Connecticut what we are, and we're a connectivity company, right? And so what that means is we're connecting people, okay? So we're either connecting people through our products and services like our high-speed internet or our new mobile devices. We're connecting our communities through partnering with events like the Manatee County Chamber of Commerce here, obviously today, or different other community events to help bridge the digital divide and expanding access into rural and unserved areas. Or actually, I'm going to take a second here. I can't thank Manatee County enough right now. Just this past Friday, we expanded our service. We just received an award from Governor DeSantis, and because of these folks here up on the stage, to expand our high-speed internet out to over 250 locations in Manatee County who did not have service at all. So thank you to these folks here today. Thank you for the county commissioners and the Chamber of Commerce. It's a novel concept, right? That people are thinking that we're living here today and they're not connected to the internet. But I could stand on this soapbox for way too long, and Casey's going to kick me off the stage at some point. But we're connecting our communities, we're connecting people through our products and services, and ultimately we're connecting our employees. I want to take one more second here to introduce a couple of other people who are here today from our team. We got Leah Brown. We've got Jessica Caruso, and we've got Kate Wallace here, all from the Spectrum team here. So give them a round of applause. And None of that matters because you're not here today to hear about Spectrum at all. You're here today to hear a lot from these fine rock stars here in our Manatee County delegation and our Sarasota delegation here as well that comes here and fights the good fight up in Tallahassee and does a lot of great things up in Tallahassee that a lot of us we know that they're up there fighting. Sometimes we don't know exactly what's going on behind the curtain, but I know that today they're going to give us a little bit of a sneak preview of what's going on behind the curtain and all the great things that they did for us up in Tallahassee. So again, thank you guys. Enjoy the pints, enjoy the politics, and let's have a good day.
Thank you. Thank you, Albie, and appreciate your service on the legislative committee and the constant support. Before we introduce Ben, I do want to introduce one other special guest that we have. And since her boss, Senator Boyd's not here, I want to call out Kathy Galia from Senator Boyd's office. Go ahead and wave, Kathy. Sorry, I didn't get to introduce you earlier. So again, I want to give a special thanks also to Oscura and for hosting our event today. And we'll introduce Ben Bacher, who's the owner and managing partner.
Thank you. Well, everyone, welcome to Oscura. We are so happy you're here. I've been talking with so many of you who are here for the very first time. This place is very near and dear to both myself and my partners. We started this place as a passion project, as a place for the community. So we hope that you enjoy yourselves tonight. We do hope that you'll come back. We serve some of the best locally roasted coffee in town and a fantastic breakfast and lunch menu. And we are open on the weekends with live original music and all kinds of other fun events on the regular. Jazz brunches on Sunday. We have a great calendar, so you can follow us on the social media at Oscura Live or at Oscura Events. But besides that, as you can see, we are also an event venue. So if you have anything like political fundraisers that you would like to do at certain points, we are more than happy to host you. Wedding showers, bridal showers, high school reunions. We do lots of that here. We can cater as well to go, and we've got a great happy hour. So most importantly, I'm just so happy that you are all here. I hope we see you all again, and welcome to our place, and I'm very excited to hear this tonight. So thank you.
Thank you, Ben. Again, I want to introduce myself as Casey Welch. I am the chair of the Legislative Committee. I want to give a special recognition to my boss, Dr. Karen Holbrook, who's the chancellor of the University of South Florida, Sarasota Manatee, who allows me in my spare time to have pancakes and pints with you, not on the same day, different days. But thank you, Dr. Holbrook, for your support and your leadership in the community. Also, I want to recognize my fellow Legislative Committee members and Chamber Commandos. All of you went to Tallahassee and worked tirelessly on the legislative agenda. Please stand up and wave for the crowd. Thank you. These folks work very hard to get the legislative agendas who they are around. Tara has copies if you want to see what issues we were advocating so vociferously on. One of the bills that actually was particular interest was presented to the governor today, HB 5, which is on economic programs, an issue that we were working as a chamber very hard to make sure that we had adequate access to economic development programs and issues of concern to the business community here in Manatee County. Of course, the governor does not have the budget, as we've all been talking about, but there has been a lot of bills that have been signed by the governor, but there's a lot of bills that have not been signed by the governor. So I want to kick off by introducing State Senator Joe Gruters, who represents Sarasota and Manatee counties, to talk about where his legislative priorities ended up for this legislative session. Senator Gruters.
Thank you. Thanks for coming out. Casey, thanks for hosting us. You guys always do a great job, and the chamber deserves a lot of credit for all the great things that happened this year in the legislature. For those of you who don't know, Casey Welch and I, you can see we're very similar body types. And I only say that because we went to Cardinal Mooney High School together. We were on the weightlifting team together. Yes, Commissioner, Councilwoman. And we played football together. And we usually were in the same weight class and the same positions all the way through high school. A great guy. And USF's lucky to have you. This legislative session was an absolute home run. Plus, I want to recognize my two staff members back there. So if anybody calls me and asks for help right? Usually it's one of my staff members that actually gets the job done. They call me, and then I call you and take the credit, the glory. But it's Vicki Brill and Hunter Flack back there that do a great job. They both came today. And I will tell you, everything in terms of Tallahassee is a team. It's a team approach. You get stuff done from the legislative side with a team. You get stuff done with the budget side with a team. And we probably had one of the most remarkable conservative sessions in Florida history. I tell people the first 20 years of Republican leadership up in Tallahassee, we passed a lot of good legislation, and they laid the groundwork for what's happened over the last 3 years. When Governor DeSantis took office, we passed more conservative bills in the 2 years than we did in the previous 20. And this year, we passed more bills than we did in the previous 22. So you could see that steep incline in terms of all the things and all the good, if you are a fan of conservative leadership, everything we've accomplished. Some of my bills, you know, I've had a history that, I'm sorry, I've had a history of
We talked about silencing cell phones, didn't we?
Yes, it's my wife. I've been calling her all day. It's a, where are you now? It's a, one of these things is, in the past couple sessions, I've sponsored 60 to 70 bills. In the Senate, we're so fortunate to be able to pass or be able to file unlimited bills. We try to do a lot more with a lot less this year. And so I think we filed 25, and I think we got 13 or 14 over the line. And not all of them have been signed yet, but we're hoping, and probably one of the priorities I've worked on most over the last couple years is alimony reform. And you say, how did I ever talk about alimony and divorce and all that good stuff? And the issue is, as a CPA, and one of my old bosses here is Greg. I know you saw him on the committee. He'll tell you, as a CPA, one of the most devastating things you could see as a professional is when people get divorced, how devastating the process is. Divorce is devastating. The process is more devastating. So the question is, how can you streamline that process so families can keep more of the assets that they earned over the course of their lifetime before they split up, no matter whose fault it is, try to set up some type of formula system. And I've run this bill, I think, 4 consecutive years. We passed it last year, got vetoed. We came back. I brought both sides together prior to session. No lobbyists were involved, and we got the attorneys and the reform groups together, and we went and hammered out 8 different issues, and we got a bill that 95% of the public can support. So I'm optimistic that that the governor will sign it. It's a great policy, and I just want to mention, since the junior senator from Manatee, Jim Boyd, isn't here. He is absolutely, he sits next to me on the floor as well. So one of the most terrific human beings, and these guys are great too, but Jim Boyd is one of the nicest guys that you'll ever meet. I'm sure you guys all experience. Is so optimistic, so positive, so nice. And as we have dealt with this insurance crisis here in Florida due to the fraud and excessive litigation and everything else, there's been one individual that's taken the lead on that over and over again, and that's Jim Boyd. And so although he's not here, he deserves a lot of credit on that. And he also deserves a lot of credit on the fight, on the opioid fight. And I won't go on, but I will end with this. Our community, we have no idea most people have no idea how lucky we were to have Bill Galvano as a state senator, because he served as a Senate president. In the amount of resources that you never see that go into road projects, that go into infrastructure, that go into community groups and organizations, it's unmatched. You can't even compare it. We're so fortunate because Jim Boyd is going to carry that mantle for our communities once again in just a couple years. So we've hit one home run with Galvano. We're getting another one with Jim Boyd. And in Florida, and with these two guys following us up, we're in great shape for a long time.
Thank you, Senator. Now I want to introduce Representative Tom McGregor, who represents Eastern Manatee County and also a former member of the Legislative Committee. Representative.
Thank you. I guess I should say at the beginning now, after Joe spoke, Jim Boyd is my favorite senator in Manatee County. Oh, you're my second favorite, though. Listen, I had two priorities going into the session this year, and one has been a main priority of mine since I was first elected in 2018. And it's important to all of you. And it's infrastructure. It's road building, road building, road building. But it also applies, of course, in Manatee County to bridges and ports and everything that we need here that makes a difference in your quality of life, right? Because the safer and the more efficient that we can produce the roads and the infrastructure, the better it is for you to get to and from work, to get to and from your kids' schools, to get to and from practice, to get to and from the beach, if you can find parking. We'll talk about that later. But that was the number one priority, and I have to say thank you to the Chamber and to the county commissioners, because both of these groups of great leaders always do a good job for us, lining out what your priorities are, lining them up for us, specifying exactly what you need, whether we're talking about 44th Avenue or a bridge or money for double diverging diamond intersections. There's a lot of work to be done, and to Joe's point, it makes a tremendous difference when you have people in leadership. But it's not just Senator Boyd, working up the ranks. It's Senator Gruder's here is well thought of in leadership. I'm not sure exactly what number he is and how they identify it, but I think he's probably number 2 in the Senate in that class based on his relationship building over there and his strength. He really gets a lot done for us, as does Representative Robinson, and that makes a big difference for you. When you have good people up there. The second priority I had is, like Joe said, we don't have the luxury of filing 25 bills. We can only file 7, some years 6. But what they didn't prohibit it is us combining 5, 6, maybe 7 bills into one, and that's what I did this year. That was my second priority. I took 7 tort reform ideas. We combined them into one bill. Then Will and I worked together to get them through civil justice and the Judiciary Committee. I could talk for the next 5 hours about that bill because it really is going to make a tremendous difference for you, for all Florida families. It's going to go a long way towards cutting your tort tax that you're paying every year that you don't see it because you don't get an individual bill for it. But everything you've been buying in Florida has been more expensive because trial attorneys have had an unlevel playing field. They've had the advantage across the board, and businesses and Floridians have been paying the price. We got it done. We got it across the board this year, 7 different bills inside of one. It's going to make a big difference. So thanks again for inviting us here. It's a pleasure.
Thank you, Representative Gregory. And last but certainly not least, Representative Will Robinson, who represents Western Manatee County and former chair of the Legislative Committee. Representative.
Thank you. Thank you. Actually, welcome to District 71. You're actually in my legislative district. Ben Bacher, this is a wonderful, wonderful place. Thank you for opening up a business in District 71. And maybe I will do my next campaign event here. This is actually really nice place, actually. And Joe mentioned it, that this session was absolutely incredible. It was Tommy and I's 5th legislative session. And in some ways, it was a fairly typical session. We had an immigration bill, we had an abortion bill, we had a lot of the topics that we may talk about today, we did those. But a lot of those bills were exceptionally substantive. Very few are one-page bills, as I like to call them. They were heavy, very well debated. Some of the best debates that you will ever hear in the United States was on the Florida House of Representatives floor. It was such an intense and such a work-heavy session that even the Senate worked this session. It was incredible. Many days we'll be there and it's 6 o'clock hits and the Senate's gone at their fundraiser. Oh, you can't have fundraisers. At their ice cream socials or whatever y'all do at 6 o'clock. And the House is on Bill 41 of 300. But no, I'm just actually, it was really a great, fun, long session, a very, very long session. It's still 60 days. We actually ended early, not early, but right on the 60th day for the first time. But we used every one of those 60 days. Many weeks I'd be coming home on a Thursday, maybe coming back on a Monday. That didn't happen a lot this session. And what Representative Gregory kind of failed to mention is he was a legislative hero for the bill. I mean, he kept coming back to me because my committee was the first stop for his tort reform package. and he said, well, I have two more ideas. I think I'm going to throw two more ideas into this bill. And we were in that committee hearing on this bill for 4.5 hours on that one bill. And I had to go to the bathroom. And I thought to myself, if this guy can handle this bill and handle all the questions, and all I have to do is just sit up there and gavel people in and out, I can at least sit here and make sure that this guy gets through this committee hearing. But he did a great job with that bill. And Joe, you've been a legislative hero as well, budget items, and you're exactly right. It is about the team approach. And along with Senator Boyd and Representative Beltran, I think we have the strongest delegation in the state of Florida. For me, I had probably my best session personally. All of my bills but one passed. I think I had 7 bills that passed. Thank you. Please send your applause to Governor DeSantis because he hasn't gotten 5 of them yet. 2 of the 7 have been signed into law, and the one that didn't get through, actually pieces of it made it into another bill. But for me, given my family's background with the Robinson Preserve, beach access and access to our public lands is incredibly important to me. Water quality is incredibly important to me. I worked with Senator Boyd to now get a law in place to help with seagrass mitigation in our area and have the same type of program. If you all remember the devastating red tide we had in 2018-19, Moat Marine is doing some fabulous work, scientific work on that space, and I think we're going to have world-renowned technology to combat red tide, and we're going to have the same thing with seagrass mitigation. And secondly, the second bill that the governor signed, you may not have heard of this. This is a little bit in the weeds, but there is a company that would go to a homeowner and offer them $1,000 to list their home, and they would record a document and allow them to list that home for 40 years. As a real estate lawyer, it was one of the most oppressive agreements that I've ever seen. Was very much an agreement that I thought was unfair to homeowners. So I worked with Senator Bradley to make sure these homeowners were not taken advantage of. Many of them didn't know what they were signing, and the governor thankfully signed that bill into law about a week or so ago. 5 other bills that are pending the governor's review, including the budget. We have a lot of great priorities in Manatee and frankly Sarasota County that are in the budget. A lot of stuff for infrastructure, water quality, schools, go Bulls. We got a great project there that hopefully we can keep in the budget. City of Bradenton, I know we did some great work for your emergency operations center that will be great for our whole city. So a lot of great stuff in the budget. And like Joe said, that is a team approach. And any one of those budget items that you all may know about, please write the governor's office. That stuff really does work. Their staff does read those letters and advise the governor. And I know the governor's out there in Iowa or New Hampshire right now, but he is paying attention, and he does have a lot of important work to do with regard to these bills. But I'm proud of what we all did as a legislative session, and certainly we're interested to hear what your thoughts are. So thank you.
Thank you, Representative Robinson. We are going to get to questions. If you would like to ask a question and you're a chamber member, there is a microphone over here by this red column. If you want to line up there and get ready, I will call on you, but I'm going to take chair's privilege here and ask a couple individual questions on behalf of the legislative committee to our respective members of the delegation that are up here, just to get one thing we like to do here at Politics and Pints is get a little bit behind the curtain of how things worked. And I know Chair Robinson, we can joke a little bit about reading out name cards. We won't do that here today. But what I would like you to talk to the crowd about is one of the pieces of legislation you worked on that I thought was super interesting, just to the nuances I think that would be helpful for the crowd to understand, like how the process actually works, was the marijuana legislation that the THC, just the interesting nuances of how many variations you had to do of that bill, and just kind of walk through for folks a little bit of behind the scenes of the process, if you could.
Well, just in case you didn't catch Casey's joke right there, and thankfully, maybe a few of y'all didn't. This left side didn't laugh, so maybe I should admit this. Just Google my name in Florida, and I think it'll pop up immediately. So as part of our process, you have the public that's attending, and they fill out a comment card and their name. And I read 2 names that I thought looked fine, but when you said them, they made people laugh. Let's just put it that way. And I just did it back to back. And
I made, what show did I make? Was it Jimmy Kimmel? Jimmy Kimmel and The Daily Show, I think. I thought I was going to go to Los Angeles or New York and just start reading names, for these people. What was your question again about
Yes, THC.
marijuana? That's right. It wasn't marijuana, by the way. This is an interesting question on how the legislative process works. So one of my dear friends in the Senate, besides Joe Gruters and Senator Boyd, if they're listening, or he's listening, is Senator Colleen Burton, who represents Polk County, and great Polk County. And she asked me before session, Will, do you mind exchanging drafts on hemp regulation? I'm like, sure. Let's do that. And before I keep going too much, I want to introduce my legislative aide, Elena Fay, because this was an amazing bill that she helped shepherd through. So give a round of applause to Elena.
He's a USF rep.
Yeah, USF. And before I knew it, I'm filing a bill on hemp. And I'm a real estate lawyer. But now we do a lot of stuff that maybe I should admit this, a lot of bills we file we don't know anything about. I mean, to be honest with you, but you learn it. I mean, it's just like anything in school. You learn the subject matter. So I wanted to develop a mastery of hemp, and yeah, yeah. Unfortunately, apparently, with a bill that I drafted, would have eliminated all of hemp in Florida. So that's part of the legislative process. Is you have I had business owners. I frankly met with a business owner in Manatee County about it, and we narrowed the bill down. And draft after draft, and actually, I was at one of the committee hearings, and one of the members of the public said, "What is a real estate lawyer doing with a hemp bill? Why is this person?" And he made a fair point. I didn't really take offense to it. He was understandably frustrated with where the bill was, but as part of the legislative process, we narrowed the bill down, and it passed unanimously. It passed unanimously off the House floor, passed unanimously off the Senate floor. It was really, and I still think it's an issue that we have to go back at. You've heard of Delta 8. Delta 8 is still an frankly regulated part of the hemp program in Florida, and it's becoming marijuana light. And to me, I think we still need to address that in Florida. And there's others that may disagree with that, but I because of the fact that folks don't know what's going into some of those hemp products, I still think we need to go further. But we did some great things with this bill on we raised the age to 21 years that children can't get it, some packaging and stuff like that. So hopefully the governor signs the bill.
Thank you for that behind the scenes look, and again, there are some of these bills that you follow through the process and you file on behalf of friends across the Capitol, and it's interesting to see how those come across. Again, anyone who wants to ask questions, you can line up, and I promise I will call of you. Representative Gregory, I know you mentioned this a little bit, but if you could talk a little bit more about the, and you touched on it, but if you could dive a little bit deeper into the heavy lift that was tort reform and getting everyone in the room and how it all worked a little bit behind the scenes, I think would be helpful for everyone today.
My pleasure. Probably the easiest way to give you a little bit of insight into the tort reform bill is just briefly talk about two aspects of it. One was what we call the elimination of a one-way attorney fee. And the way a one-way attorney fee, it's kind of self-explanatory, but the way it works is Floridians were able to sue an insurance company. It didn't matter if their lawsuit was meritorious or frivolous. If they won, so it was meritorious, they go to court, they win, they get their attorney's fees back. If they lose, they don't have to pay the insurance company's fees. And so lawyers found out a way to monetize that, right? The law is no different than any business that you're in. It will respond to an economic incentive. And a one-way fee is an economic incentive for enterprising, although a little less than honorable attorneys to file lawsuit after lawsuit after lawsuit, because they know what you know as business owners, and that is it costs you money to defend a lawsuit. It doesn't matter how small it is for your business. That lawsuit's going to cost you anywhere from $5,000 to $25,000 to defend it. And if it's only a one-way fee, you're not getting your money back. There's no incentive for them not to file it because they're not going to have to pay if they lose. But there is an incentive for you to settle, right? And so think about the insurance companies, and just by show of hands, how many of you are paying too much for insurance in Florida? Well, now you know why, because there was such a thing as a one-way fee. And if you think lawyers weren't abusing it, or at least some lawyers, again, a small number, But there was, for example, one lawyer in South Florida that filed 75,000 lawsuits in 1 year. 75,000 lawsuits. Now, most of those lawsuits were for amounts less than $100 in controversy, right? So whether they were meritorious or not, it was a very small number. But again, I told you it costs you $5,000 to $25,000 just to defend it. So what was happening were insurance companies were settling those lawsuits for $3,000 in attorney's fees plus whatever the $25, $50, $100 difference was. But if you multiply 3,000 times 75,000, you get a really big number, right? You're talking massive impacts to the insurance companies in Florida that directly contributed to the amounts that you were paying in premium. So now you kind of know a little, that's just one example of an insight into why were insurance rates going up so fast in Florida and why were they going up year after year? It's because the playing field wasn't level. So we leveled it this year. We did away with that one-way attorney fee, that economic incentive for the filing of frivolous lawsuits. And then another thing we did was remove an incentive in kind of the same way for frivolous automobile accident lawsuits. Now, I could do another show of hands. I know you're paying too much for your automobile insurance. How do I know that? Because Florida has the #1 highest auto liability insurance premiums in the country. It's an area where we don't want to be #1. We're #1 in all sorts of great things, right? We're #1 now in education. We're #1 in net migration, people moving to the state. We're #1 in talent acquisition. We're still bringing in 1,000 people a day. Most of them, frankly, from my perspective, are voting the right way, so I'm happy about that. But we don't want to be #1 in automobile insurance rates. So one of the changes we made is we said, we're going to change to what we call, in lawyer speak, modified comparative negligence. I know it's a little bit of a mouthful, but it basically means if you're more than 51% at fault, you don't get to sue the other person. Because what we had were accidents where people were 94, 95, 99% at fault, and they were suing the other driver. And of course, they've got whiplash and spinal injury. They have all sorts of injuries that they quantify, and you can tell by my sarcastic way of voicing them my doubt in the validity of those claims. But those are just 2 out of the 7 things that we attacked. Now, you can probably guess when we're going after people who are making millions and millions and millions of dollars a year, actually $40 billion change hands in Florida courts every year, $40 billion. Right, and you know how contingency fees work, so you know how much lawyers were typically getting of those fees. They had a lot of money riding on it, and they spend that money every year in advertising, right? You see those billboards on I-75. They spend that money on lobbying, and they certainly spend it on trips to go visit us. So I don't know how many hundreds of lawyers that Will got to meet with and Joe got to meet with as they pled their case on why we shouldn't change this law, but I can tell you as a bill sponsor, it was a lot of them. I'll give you one behind-the-scenes thing to kind of demonstrate it, and that is as we were negotiating this bill, as it's moving through the system, all those lawyers, all these stakeholders, lots of discussions on one particular day, and this probably describes every day that we're driving back from Tallahassee. On one particular day between leaving Tallahassee and getting to the Skyway Bridge, I took my 42nd phone call as we were on top of the bridge because we were negotiating an amendment. And these guys know we have very firm deadlines on getting a bill into drafting, get an amendment into drafting, and get it filed. And I'll just say I only had about, I won't tell you how long, because I went really fast from the Skyway Bridge to a property on Moccasin Wallow across from the Publix there, pulled over, used the phone as a hotspot, got it into drafting with 2 minutes to spare, got it filed, about 30 seconds to spare, only because of the great work of my district aide there, Carol Kalinda, sitting in the middle taking pictures of me, and my legislative aide. But that's kind of the typical just mayhem as you drive to and from Tallahassee negotiating this bills. Again, I could talk on and on about it, but it's a big bill and a pleasure to work on it.
Thank you, Representative Gregory. Appreciate that background. Senator Gruters, I know you talked a little bit about your alimony bill. Another interesting bill I thought you worked on this year was the Kratom bill. Could you talk a little bit about that bill and what it did and your interest in that issue?
Well, does anybody know what Kratom is? No. So it's a supplement, and Sarasota County is one of the only counties that banned its sale a long time ago after somebody took Kratom and they, I think, bit somebody's face off. The true story, about 15 years ago. However, the problem with kratom is University of Florida leads one of the largest studies of kratom and the impact. And tens of thousands of people across the country use this supplement for a variety of different things. It helps people get off opioids. It's a supplement. It has the different effects. But where it goes south is when people cut kratom with other items. It's just like vaping when they use the vaping things and they cut it with some other substance. It's and so what we were trying to do is we're trying to regulate it. We made sure, and it passed, and it may have already been signed, where you have to be over the age of 21 now to buy it. You have to, it's officially in the records in the Department of Agriculture, and but most of the bill was gutted at the last second. So it basically became a shell of a bill. We did still pass something, but in reality, what happens a lot of times in the legislative process is they get passed out of the House. I think they send it over to the Senate. I've run this bill the last couple of years. We had a great bill, great compromise, and then all of a sudden somebody raises their hand and says, "Well, we don't like it." Well, what don't you like? And I won't tell you who. I said, "Well, what don't you like?" And they said, "Well, it's going to cost the taxpayers. We think it's going to cost because what it did is it set up a registration process. So if you're selling products of kratom, it would have to be tested to make sure that it wasn't being cut. And so they would have to register as essentially a vendor. And somebody said that was going to cost, I don't know, $8 million. And I said, well, all they're doing is taking paperwork and they're not paying for any of the testing. I think it's a lot less than that. I think you could do it with half a person for 3 months out of the year. No, $8 million, we need 21 employees. I said, well, that's the problem with government. And so we went back and forth, and I said, we found another compromise to bring it all the way down to 2.1 million. We got everybody to agree to it. I said, okay, this is and we adjusted the bill. And I thought we had a deal. And then right before we went up, they called me and they said, no, we don't like that either. We're going to pass it if you will, but just we won't tell you what's going to happen. But so basically what we did is I would have just killed the bill personally because I was so upset. But what happens is you have so many stakeholders that work through the process that we said, okay, we'll pass what we have, and then we'll come back next year and we'll attach a fee and we'll try to do the rest of the bill. But ultimately, it's to protect the consumer from unscrupulous vendors and to make sure that kids aren't being exposed to a product that could do them harm.
Thank you, Senator. I appreciate you all three giving a little bit behind the scenes of how the legislative process actually works and talk about individual bills that you worked on. I want to reiterate again that you're no doubt the strongest delegation in the state of Florida. Every time the chamber comes up to Tallahassee, we meet with you. We have very in-depth meetings. It's not just a photo op. We have very in-depth policy discussions. You all always ask how you can help. We ask you how we can help. We work together to make sure that the Manatee County is a strong county and the business community is strong. So I want to thank you for that. I know, sir, you've been standing there for a very long time patiently. I haven't forgotten about you. If you would state your name and your organization and then ask your question to me, and then I will try to divvy it out to the appropriate person.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. My name is Juan Pablo Salas from Solmar Media, Radios La Zeta and La Número Uno. And this is in regards to HB 1718. I don't know to what extent you were directly involved in it, but it has already taken an effect in the community, and many families have already been appended, and some of them have left Florida. And in some areas, the economy seems to be suffering because of the lack of workers. I don't know to what extent the law have foreseen this happening, but my question to you is, what would be the message to the immigrants communities today that are in fear because of the possible consequences of 1718, mostly because people don't completely understand what the law implies, and mostly because they don't understand what the consequences to the legal part of the family would be when they are sheltering their own family in-house and stuff like that. So what would be the message for the immigrant community at this point? Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. So I think it was Senate Bill 1718 that was referred to.
And it's the immigration bill, and we're getting lots of questions. I'm sure that we're all getting questions on it from local businesses. What's going to happen? I've gotten calls from immigrants who are worried about being pulled over and being shipped out or being deported, and from business owners who are saying that some of their employees are already leaving and they may end up selling their company. Well, the sky's not going to fall as a result of this bill. I think the governor wanted to do everything he could to make sure that Florida was law-abiding, saying that people follow the laws. However, what happens is in these political issues is things get blown way out of proportion, and the bill is strong, but however, it creates a lot of opportunities for businesses and for people that are here working to continue working. So what I tell everybody who's been calling our office is the sky's not falling. Continue to go to work every day, and you should be fine. But but the governor, this was a priority of his, and it's about making sure that people are doing the right thing. However, it does create a lot of outs, and I'm happy to discuss with you afterwards on some of those opportunities that people could use.
Sure, I'll just add on. It is important that, like Joe said, we have to watch our messaging. And sometimes our messaging tends to get lost as conservative Republicans. Our message can get lost in the media. But our message has been consistent. The part that you never hear in the media is that we love immigrants. We want immigrants to come to this country. We won't survive as a country without them. We will not. We gotta have them. But it's that we also love law and order. So we want immigrants to come here. We want them to do every job from landscaping to rocket scientists and anything in it, whatever skill set they have, we want them to come here and pursue the American dream. But to pursue the American dream, we want them to be here lawfully. We want them to ask permission. We want them to go through the process. We want to get here lawfully, be here lawfully, work here lawfully. And the problem, and I know we all know this, is that Washington, D.C. doesn't get it. They've known about this problem for decades, that we don't have enough work visas, and they're not doing anything to solve it. Instead, they're looking the other way and not enforcing our laws at the border. We have to get both of those things right. We got to have border security, and we have to have more immigration so that it doesn't negatively impact our economy. Those messages need to be played together.
Thank you both. Thank you, sir. Now we got proprietor's privilege, Ben.
I feel like I'm monopolizing the mic tonight. So every Politics and Pints and Politics and Pancakes, I think for the last 6 to 8 years, I've come to the mic and asked the same question. And that is getting an answer on aid for affordable housing and the use of the Sadowski Fund to go towards that. But this session, all of you successfully passed SB 102, otherwise known as the Live Local Act. I cannot thank you enough for doing that, and how grateful we are to you for doing that. For the edification of everybody here today, can you educate them on exactly what SB 102 is and what it will do for our area and for affordable housing?
Great question. Thank you.
And I'm glad you mentioned that, Ben. That bill is one of the transformational bills that I was thinking about. We always talk about affordable housing. This was, I think, the priority of the Senate President, Senator Gruters. So this was her #1 priority. It's a massive bill. It's over 50 pages long. It fully funds a number of affordable housing projects and programs from ship to sale. We always talk about not fully funding Sadowski. It fully funds Sadowski. It also allows folks to have easier access to get projects approved that are for affordable housing in nature. I love all of our local officials here. They do great work, but in some other areas, it's tough sometimes to approve affordable housing projects because where are those? Those are usually in infill projects. You have higher dense situations, and the public comes out, and those projects get either denied or they get watered down. It's very, very difficult. So the bill puts in some flexibility to allow for those projects to be approved a little bit quicker, so we can get those projects on the ground and get folks affordable housing, because that is one of the #1 issues in our state. As Representative Gregory says, we have a #1 migration into this state. People are coming here. It's not going to slow down anytime soon, and so I think this bill will do a really great thing to helping us solve that.
Thank you. Great question. Neil, want to add to that? That is one of the Chamber's highest priorities, and that Live Local Act was the #1 priority of the Senate President. So, ready to go ahead?
All right. Hi, I'm Melissa Larkin-Skinner. I'm the CEO of Centerstone of Florida. In case all of you don't know, we used to be called Manatee Glens. We started in Manatee County in 1955. And no, I am not one of the founders, even though one of your colleagues asked me if I was one of the founders. So you never know what you're going to hear when you visit Tallahassee. Let me just say that. We provide mental health and addiction treatment in a lot of counties in Florida at this point, not just Manatee. But I just want to back up what Casey has already said. I don't actually have a question, but I wanted to back up
Take cheerleading questions. It's fine. Go ahead.
I just want to back up what Casey has said is I'm not sure everyone appreciates how strong our delegation is. This delegation, the delegation before it, in fact, are the reason that we have 16 psychiatric residents that we train every single year here in Manatee County. Each one of those residents serves at least 800 people. That's times 16, so that people are able to access services they would otherwise not be able to for mental health and addiction treatment. And I don't know if you know this or not, but the opioid epidemic, along with COVID, has really decimated the workforce. So in Manatee County for a long time, we were #1 in overdose deaths. It's been going on since about 2009. I've been doing this a long time. And we don't want that. We don't want to decimate the workforce. So all the support they give, they're a very humble gentlemen, along with Senator Boyd's, President Galvano before them. They're the reason every single year I go up there and I say, please file my bills or support this or get me this money. And they're the reason we have a psychiatric residency, the reason we've been able to expand trauma services, the reason that we were able to continue providing services throughout COVID and didn't stop a single thing. So I wanted to make sure everyone hears me say thank you.
And Melissa, thank you for what you do. I know Representative Gregory and I toured your facility a few years ago, and I believe it was a brainchild of President Galvano, the psychiatric program, and just to talk to them and how much value that they bring to your center and to our community. Hopefully we can get them to stay here and be here full time. But thank you on behalf of your entire squad out there, thank you for what you do for our community.
Yes, thank you. And Melissa, I want to thank you too, also as being a part of the Health Committee and the Legislative Committee and always being there and making sure that we have a robust legislative agenda for the healthcare, for the workforce in our community. So thank you for your leadership. Sarah?
Hi, my name's Sarah Ham. My company is Spark Growth. And actually, I want to piggyback on what Ben said. Sometimes there's things that is the general public that most people don't know. So Casey represents higher education. We just talked about immigration. I have today an intern here who's doing his first day of work. And we talked about this story of his parents, his mom, coming from the Philippines and taking 5 years to get her citizenship. Higher education, immigration, students coming from other countries, that can be a hot topic. Could you guys speak with that?
Cross-section of higher education and immigration reform. Boy,
So I think
that's a nuance.
and I want to throw out there, Casey, that a lot of times people don't realize that students coming from other countries, they pay full price at universities. And so what does that mean for our business model? And so that's kind of a hot mess like immigration is. So if you guys could maybe speak into that.
So I was the education chairman the previous 2 years, which dealt with higher education and high schools and everything else, K through 12. But I will tell you, in higher education, I was also on the board of trustees at Florida State University for 8 years. And so the question always is what's the right mixture of international students versus state students versus, domestic students overall? The problem is what universities face here in Florida is, think of how I would never be able to get into Florida State today. You have to basically have a 4.0 unweighted, like a 1,400 SAT score. Florida is a 4.0 because it's not unweighted GPA, right? And they get rid of anything that's non-core curriculum. So that means if it's not, math, science, history, it doesn't count. So it's almost impossible to get into our universities. Even USF, I don't know what their standards are now, but even USF, UCF, we have the #1 state university system in the whole country. But what I will tell you is, you're right, they do pay full price. And that's why it's such an advantage for these universities to bring in as many as they want. But I don't think you would ever, I think we try to take 80% as the number of Florida-based students. in which the state ends up paying almost, with all the scholarships that are available and those high standards, the state almost pays the entire tuition. That's why you don't say, we'll raise tuition, because who's going to pay the tuition? It's still going to be the state. But a good point, international students make up the university campuses, and I'm sure there's lots of openings right now at New College that plenty of international students can apply for. They'd probably all get in.
I didn't go there.
You gave him the opening, Sarah. You gave him the opening. I will add, Senator, that the legislature does set not only tuition, but also that percentage balance of out-of-state versus in-state students. So that is something that the legislature does. So great question, Sarah. Chair of the Transportation Committee and Vice Chair Emeritus of the Legislative Committee, Richard.
Richard Bedford, Greenland developer. Thank you guys for coming. Representative Gregory, you know what my question is? How do we do on Second Amendment, Constitution, Patriots type stuff this session?
I thought you might ask that question. Heard that before. We had a great year for constitutional conservatives and for Second Amendment lovers this year by passing permitless carry, constitutional carry. It goes by different names depending on where you fall on that political spectrum. But we basically removed a hurdle that was blocking some people's ability to exercise their Second Amendment rights. And you may be thinking, well, is that true? Is that true? And I can tell you, it's true. I had constituent after constituent, especially before we had a change in the last election, come to me and say, for example, hey, something happened when I was 16 or 19 or 21 outside of a bar. I was charged with a misdemeanor in some other state. Now I can't get my concealed weapons permit. And it always required a representative or a senator to intervene with the Commissioner of Agriculture, say, hey, what is the deal? They weren't convicted of a felony. There's nothing that disqualifies them from being able to get a concealed weapon permitless, to carry. And as soon as you got one of us involved, it kind of broke the log jam. So great for us. We were able to help our constituent, but the point is that help should have never been necessary. And that's the problem with interfering with a constitutional right and placing government bureaucracy in the middle. It makes you subject to the whims of a bureaucrat. So I'm glad that this year we removed that. You can still get a permit. I still advise you to get a permit if you want one, because it helps for reciprocity and there's other things that it's more efficient for, but you no longer have to have one in Florida. And I'm glad that we got that across the finish line this year.
Thank you. Representative, can you clarify one part that I've seen in the press about background checks as part of that legislation that officially, I know it doesn't become law until July 1, but can you clarify the background check part of that?
It doesn't change the background check requirements in Florida. We did get questions about that. You still have to pass the background check to buy a firearm in Florida.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. Yes, sir.
So I'm Mike Burton with Black & Veatch, environmental scientist and New College alumnus. So thought I'd throw that out there. So Representative Robinson, every year we talk about what's going on with water quality and a number of environmental issues. And the legislature does all these great things with programs and policies to push the DEP into doing things like taking on the Clean Water Act 404 program from the federal government, which I pushed for that for 20 years. Be careful what you wish for. A water quality credit creating program that would allow the private sector to invest in water quality improvement programs that users need. And we talk about all these infrastructure needs and in ways to mitigate environmental impacts and all these great projects. But here's the problem. The DEP is understaffed. They're 2 years behind everything that the legislature is trying to do. They're not making any progress. When I talk to people that work at the DEP, even at the most senior levels, it always comes down to funding. So what I'd like to ask the delegation to be thinking about, and I'd like to hear your response as well, is what are we doing to make sure that we can ensure that the DEP is staffed with qualified people and that they have the resources they need to implement the programs that the legislature really wants to see and that the public needs.
Thank you for the in-depth question. Representative?
Mike, thanks for your comment there. That's the first time someone's brought that issue to me, so the first person I'll talk to is the appropriations chair about that, and certainly staff, because we got to make sure, and that's the problem, is we love passing legislation, But sometimes when we do that, there's some unintended consequences of more work that's shifted to a different department or not. So if we need to get that realigned, we'll certainly look into it.
If I could pitch hint, Mr. Chairman, I'll add that I know that in the $117 billion largest ever state budget that you all decided on the largest tranche of money for Florida Forever and also the wildlife corridor in the history of the state of Florida. So I think that's something that may be of interest that makes it past the finish line with the budget to those issues. I don't know if that's actual budget lines to the DEP, but as far as overall funding in those programs that they help manage, that is the largest that is on record as far as my knowledge. Great question. Yes.
My name is Joey Leyva, and I'm a girl. Joey, but I'm a girl, just in case. Okay, so I have to say 3 things before I start my question, because my question was stolen. It was probably one of the first questions that was mentioned here about the immigration bill. But
So you're asking the question that's already been asked?
no, second question. I had 2, but I'm gonna go with the second
So
one
you're
then.
on the second question first?
Yeah, second one.
Okay, go ahead.
So first of all, before I say that, I want to say 3 things because a lot of people here probably think about the same thing I do, but I'm a proud American citizen, which I became a citizen last year. Okay? Okay. A proud Floridian. I've been here for like over 20 years, 25, half of my life, maybe even better. And also, I am a proud Governor DeSantis supporter. So I'm a Republican. So I said that out loud. So I hope it doesn't backfire on me. So anyway, my question was because I represent Acapulco Tropical Supermarkets. I don't know if any of you guys know that. So we have 3 locations here in Manatee County. We moved from Polk County, which I love too. Okay, and okay, let's not go there. But anyway, we're closing this Thursday because of the immigration bill, because we're trying to support the construction and agriculture workers, and it was a tough decision. I didn't want to close, but most of our customers are construction and agriculture workers. They go there for lunch, so we're closing. And that was my question. So we'll elaborate. You say we could elaborate about it later. But my second question, pardon my English. My English is not very good. It's about the arcades in Manatee County. I just want to know what you guys are doing to monitor those better, because even though it doesn't affect me directly, I have a lot of customers that I hear things about the arcades, things that go in there, on there. I have a lot of friends in the sheriff's department too. I mean, they're not being monitored, I don't feel. That's my personal, and I just want to know.
Chairman Osterbridge, you want to answer that?
Okay.
I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. You always want
That's it.
Well, congratulations about your citizenship last year. Congratulations about opening up a business. That's to be celebrated. But in terms of the Gaming Commission, is they're still getting wound up and they're getting all the resources that they need. And I think we funded them even more to make sure that they can go after some of these illegal activity places. It shouldn't happen. And I've asked some of the sheriffs about why they don't go in and close some of these arcades. And here's the response. I'm not saying local sheriffs. I'm also chairman of the Regulated Industries Committee in the Senate, which includes all gambling. And so one of the things is why do we allow these statewide? They're all over the place. And the problem is the local sheriff has to go in there, shut it down. Then they have all these machines they got to deal with, and they can't get rid of them because it's an ongoing investigation, lawsuits. And so once we've given the Gaming Commission the teeth that they need to start going after these. So I would imagine literally, and I think that I talked to one of the owners of the arcades, and they were notified by the Gaming Commission to shut down. And so my guess is it's just a matter of time before you start seeing a Gaming Commission actively go out there and start forcing some of these entities. Because now I think we funded them with officers and everything else, and so they're going to go in there and shut these guys down themselves.
Thank you. Thanks, sir. Any other thing in closing? Okay, we're right on time. Thank you all. I want to thank Spectrum by Charter. Round of applause for them. How about Ben Bacher and his team here at Oscura? Thank you very much. Excellent location. Obviously want to give a shout out to Manatee Educational Television, METV, Charles Clapsettle, and your team. Thank you all for the outstanding job that you do for our community. And again, to our legislative delegation, thank you for your tireless leadership in Tallahassee, and for you House members, you'll be up there in September, won't you? All right. Thank you all. Have a great, safe evening, and we'll see you for pancakes in the fall.
you.